Welcome to Within You, a podcast for seers, seekers, and skeptics. Yo soy Viviana Carrasco. I fancy myself a modern mystic and spiritual teacher. It's my honor to guide you, to encourage you as you walk your spiritual journey, taking steps towards the calling of your very own particular soul. This series are episodes that are selections from lessons in my book, Love Being Human, The Key to Harmony Within You. I encourage you to experience the majority of 2021 and 2022 as a training program. Think of it as a program for your soul during this actual time in real life. But in 2021 and 2022, I actually took a sacred pause. I intentionally made a space for myself to grow and to evolve after I had hit a little bit of burnout as I made my way through pushing through by force and pure determination. 2020, the year the world changed. So fascinating, isn't it, to be in our pre-COVID mind and our post-COVID days? Fascinating. Anyway, I'm so grateful that I recognized that I needed this and that I honored it, even with a little bit of guilt that I wasn't doing what I thought that I should do, because this is what I'm supposed to be doing, exactly where I am right now. It is magic making, and where you are right now is actually in the mix of your own magic. So I just want to thank myself for reflecting, pausing, and then creating this to give back to you, because without that pause, I don't believe that I would have ever given birth, that I would have ever actually been able to say, I am an author and I wrote a book with help from a community, an entire village of people, but it still has my name on it. But this is what's emerged from that silence. It is a series of episodes that are taking lessons from the book that I think are like highlights. Like, I might have said a paragraph about it in the book, but I realized it really needs a little bit more context to it. So this episode in particular is the mindfulness episode. I call it the golden key to learning to love being human. It is how you get out of your head and back into your heart. This is the subtle way that your healing will happen. It's going to happen in these spirals. I love my spiral. It is an icon for my brand and who I am and what I do. It is this layering of unfolding, a repetition that brings you back from comfort and safety, and then around and around again as you're growing and growing and growing. Or if you take it backwards, then you're deepening and deepening, turning inward. Either way is right. There is no wrong. Or without mindfulness, you are a closed circle, a fixed pattern. You're a habit, and you have no agency, and you have no choice. And like one of my favorite authors likes to say, Anthony DeMello, you're asleep at the wheel. You're stuck in your past, and you have absolutely no potential or growth, because it is just like a slug. Like, I'm imagining myself like turning this wheel in a circle and creating this deeper and deeper and deeper rut into a pattern and a habit that I'm familiar with. That may make me feel comfort, but it doesn't allow you to grow. The icon I mentioned, the spiral, my spiral is a symbol of our potential, our possibility, and the growth that is innate to all of us. It is how we're supposed to live. So, mindfulness, moving beyond what you think you know. It's easy to get caught up in the difference between mindfulness and meditation, or mindful meditation, or just, you know what? Don't Google it. Don't go to the dictionary. Think of mindfulness as just noticing, the act of being curious, the act of letting the past fall away and being in the moment right now. So I have an interesting experience that is coming to mind that I want to share with you. I am a certified yoga teacher. I learned Sumit's hot yoga. I love the heat. We have a sauna. It is so my thing. can imagine myself being in like sweat lodges in my past lives or my ancestors or something, because there's something about the sweat that just makes me me. The thing about the summit, but it is the same poses. It's 80 minutes. And so someone could say that you're doing the same thing every day, but repetition has a bad reputation. You are never, ever doing the same thing every day because you are never the same. There is something that could be slightly different, like the temperature, the teacher, the music, your place in the room, your mood, literally a million different variables that are completely different. And you can choose to experience it as rote memorization, going through the moves, or as a sacred dance, a holy appointment with yourself, you looking in the mirror and having a conversation with your. That is what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is looking at yourself or looking at the other and not tying it to the past, not tying the person or the persona to something that they've done or that you think that they're going to do in the future. It is being open and curious in the moment. When I think back to the precursor to my dark night of the soul, when I was like going through my, thinking about it is kind of like silly. I had this whole thing back in the day, old Vivi, struggling with her culture and conditioning about what a good wife is supposed to be and how I was not that. Because, friends, queridas, comadres, yo y la cocina no más. Like, I'm not a kitchen person. I don't enjoy cooking. Like, I can hang out in the kitchen if it's a party and people are talking to me and we're in community, but literally just cooking to enjoy the process. So not me. But I had been conditioned. I had thought that it was something that I was supposed to like and I didn't. Comparison is the death of joy. Like, don't even do it. The old me and the new me would be like, just do you, boo. Like, just let it be. And everything will come from that. So instead, there was this challenge within me. And then what did I do? Like all humans do. I projected that pain to the person closest to me, towards David. And so he was this sort of villain. He was like horrible because he would come home from work and he would say, "What's for dinner?" And it was like a sentencing of death. Talking about it, I'm trying to make it feel silly, but it was so horrible for me when I was going through it. And I remember making a decision to allow it to be something else. Like, I know, literally, you have to listen to me and know that I am no smarter and no different than anybody. I think that the key to my release from mental and emotional and spiritual prison, from the cages that I would put upon myself, was my prayer. It was my complete surrender to God, to the Virgen de Guadalupe, to my saints, to my team, to my guardian angels, to say, just help a poor girl out. I am doing my best. And when you ask for help, Madre, you will get it. And I did. And what I noticed me walking myself through was this training to notice like the knot that would happen in my stomach right before a certain time of the day. And then this tension that would arise. And it was this conditioning that I had put myself through, this pattern. And instead, I would just become curious. This is before I knew about mindfulness. So it is a miracle for me. Literally, I'm going to call it a miracle because I'm claiming it. It happened and then I learned about it, or maybe I read about it and then I remembered it and was unconscious about it. Who knows whether the chicken or the egg came first, but I don't recall it being taught to me, and I just prayed and the answer came, try this. And I was like, I'll try anything. And so I began to become curious because noticing a knot happening in my stomach was a miracle in and of itself because I was so detached from my emotions and from my body. So all of this is a process that goes together. And this is right around the time that I was actually training to be a yoga teacher. So this unity of body and mind is this dance that I took in unison. I recommend you do the same thing because we are all one thing. It all goes together. There is no separating, just like we are not separate from our context, like our body is not separate from our mind and not separate from our thoughts and our spirit. Like it's all this machine that flows together. So noticing is how I unlocked the prison doors and walked out into a new kind of experience. And that noticing happened almost I would say in partnership with prayer and with asking for help, like saying, come help me, Spirit, God, the Virgen, like y'all do your magic around me because I can't do this on my own. I believe that you have to ask because the forces that are here to serve you aren't going to do it without your permission. Like they're not going to get in your business. They're going to stay in their own lane unless you ask. And so please ask and notice. That's what mindfulness is. Noticing, letting the death of the past die and not being so far into the present that you don't live this moment right now, moment to moment. And I just want to say that this spiral is my symbol for spiritual development. So it represents the opening or the reawakening and the return or the journey to more power and more wisdom. And my pleading with you, my ask of you today, as I introduce you to mindfulness, orientate you to a new version of mindfulness. The VV version is by way of Ellen Langer, by the way, the first female tenured psychologist in Harvard and call her the mother of mindfulness. And she has just published a book called The Mindful Body, a whole nother level. I recommend it and it will blow your mind. It's probably something you already knew, but to see it in writing and to see researchers in Ivy League universities sort of back it is cool. Mysticism is being validated. I have so much respect and reverence for the invisible versus the visible now. It's like a complete flip of back in the day when everything had to be, this tangible, written kind of thing. So what I'm asking you is whatever you do, don't close. Don't close. Don't put yourself in that rut. Open to possibility. Allow this deepening, whether it's turning inward or growing outward. Like this is our innate way of being. So this constant turning of inner world and outer world, inner world and outer world, deepening or growing out. I was a pretty good academic. It's one of the reasons why I went to school for so long. I enjoyed it. It was comfortable for me. And it just so happened the society respects it. So, but the idea of seeking something out and then accepting it as absolute, it's probably a pattern or a habit that you have. Like if you need to learn something or if you want to understand something better, what's the first thing that you do? Do you go to YouTube? Do you go to Google? Are the search engines and the algorithms providing you with your answers? Or are you coming home? Are you pausing? And I was meditating on a circle with a point in the middle. And this is what came to me, a centering in our lives, a still point. A place where our values come together, where our voice and our wisdom is spoken. So my initial question to you as I introduce mindfulness, and I really kind of try to like paint a picture of how simple it can be for you, is it with the question of when you are asking a question, where do you go for an answer? Do you go to Google? Do you go to YouTube? It's not wrong. I'm not going to say it's right either. But it's not wrong. In my instance, in this very one instance, it's one of, I don't know, maybe it won't happen next time. Maybe it will. We'll see. That's part of being mindful. I had a question. I said, what does this mean? And that's the answer that came from meditation, from prayer, from pausing. And you know what's also interesting? It wasn't an immediate answer. It actually came after several days of just being curious, of kind of sort of laying that question there and letting it float around. And then boom, so powerful that I had to write it down. That's like my favorite way to come to something. I don't know. What would you prefer to do? It's a question. What would you prefer? And every day can be different and every moment can be different because that is mindful. So learning to love being human requires you to take a journey. It requires to go on this sacred path, traveling from your head to your heart. And I say, and I could be wrong, but based on my experience, there are 3 critical skills in order to travel this path. The first and most important is what I'm talking about right now, and that is simply being curious. Interesting. Fascinating. When something comes across, I'm like, I just allow it for a second. My mind is a storytelling machine just like yours, and I will make meaning of it almost immediately, but I can bring myself back to experiencing it again and noticing what it is that I'm experiencing. So curiosity is one of 3 critical skills. And for me, I don't know, I'm not going to say the most important because all 3 of them are important, but we're talking about mindfulness right now. So let's just say it's the most important one right now because we're talking about it. The other 2 are compassion. You got to come to everything with kindness, especially yourself. And the last one, and this just happens to be my favorite one because it's the funnest for me in the moment, and that is holy creativity, intuitive creativity, allowing the innate artist in you to express your gifts in whatever way they were meant to be. You are an artist. You don't have to be named it. You don't have to go to training for it. Like, you just have to express what it is your gift is. Creativity is literally you and divinity having a dance, having a moment, and then sharing it with the world. So these are the three things. Learning to love being human requires that you are curious, that you are compassionate, and that you express your holy creativity. Breaking out of a pattern doesn't happen from will or intention alone. It requires these three things. Like, you can't force your way into breaking a pattern or a habit. I'm going to call it the fulcrum to lasting change. And the most important part of sort of this curiosity and this attention and this experience that I just told you about with the food and the cooking, I have been married to 4 different men. They just happen to be the same person. And the reason that I say that is because over the course of our 36, 37 years, maybe 38 years together, he is not the same person that he was in 1991, in 2001, in 2011, in 2021, that he is today. And he's not going to be the same person in 2034 that he is today. That is an example of not being fixed. Same person, but allowing that person to be themselves and whoever they are in that moment. And especially, it's easy to look outward, especially having that compassion and that curiosity for yourself. Because everything, literally everything is always changing, always changing. Everybody looks different from a different perspective. And if you are feeling a little bit reflective in the moment, here's something that you can journal on, or something that you can pause and ask yourself and maybe enjoy a little bit of silence. And that question is, how much of everything do you see? Impossible for our brains to allow all of the input that is coming at us to come in, and we would be completely overwhelmed. So we don't see everything. There is so much more that we don't see. But the second half of this concept of mindfulness that I want you to explore for a little bit is, how comfortable are you with uncertainty? How comfortable are you with mystery? How comfortable can you be with not knowing? Now, I'll tell you that the person I was a long time ago wasn't comfortable with this at all. I wanted to know all of the inputs. I wanted to literally be able to control the parameters. I wanted to have all the information before I made a decision, and I wanted to be certain that that decision was right. And now I recognize that there is absolutely no way for me to know all the variables, and that when I make a decision, I make that decision right. I make it right because that's what I decided in that moment based on that information. We come to this on, I don't even know how to say this right now. We have to practice this like a muscle. We have to train ourselves to notice, train ourselves to be curious, train ourselves to be mindful, moment to moment. And there's a million different ways to do that. You can do that in whatever way that you want, because you are your own best teacher and life is your classroom. So if this is something that is bubbling up a bit of excitement for you and you're feeling curious about it, then I invite you to just accept that and then see where that leads you, because there are no right or wrong answers to this. So in my notes, what I wrote down was Anthony DeMello and rain. And what that reminds me of is that Anthony DeMello has a story in his book, Awakening, that speaks of the rain. And it says that the rain is neither good or bad. It is just dependent on like the relationship to life. So is it raining and you were about to have a picnic? Or is it raining and you just planted a garden? Like, the rain is the same. It's the context that made you see the rain differently. So that's an invitation that maybe helps you open to what mindfulness can be, is to look at the context, to be open to how you're approaching life and what your relationship is to whatever the thing is that you're exploring. The last point in my notes was just to invite you to Ellen Langer's books, which I mentioned earlier. She is the author of The Power of Mindful Learning, the author of Mindfulness, and her most recent book, The Mindful Body. Just a really practical way to both add science to what is a really critical concept when it comes to living our lives, being fully human, being whole, and learning to love both our design and our potential. Curiosity, compassion, and the expression of your holy creativity. It is the Holy Trinity of living from my point of view. So in closing, I would like to invite you, if you feel stuck, if you feel in between, if you feel confused, if you just don't know what to do next and you're feeling impatient with your progress and you just don't want to do it on your own anymore, I can help you as a compassionate witness and as a guide to help you look within and teach you to learn to rely on your own intuition, because everything goes back to that. You don't have to feel lost or left in the dark. If you're ready to feel deeply connected, confident, and leaning on your own intuition, and you're interested in working with me, please call or text 760-576-5683. Gracias.